Lord, help me make this video in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we are going to be doing chapters 9 and 10, which are these letters of Herod. And I just skimmed through them not too long ago, about 20-ish minutes ago. I'm still a little shooken up. I'm a little shook up for various reasons. I don't even know how to really convey it to you. But we're going to go through it, and hopefully the Lord will tell me what I need to say. Okay, here we go. Chapter 9. Herod Antipater's defense before the Roman Senate in regard to his conduct at Bethlehem. On a scroll in the library of the Vatican, I find the following record marked Herod Antipater's defense. Okay, so it's about to start. I would like to preface this by saying he's kind of a jerk. And the next chapter is his son's letter in defense of John the Baptist. Also, getting the jerk vibes. You'll see what I mean, but I felt like, I want you to understand what we're about to read here as much as you can, because I just dove right in and I was like, okay. So I feel like the one thing I want you to be surprised, but the one thing I want you to just keep in mind is, this guy's a jerk. Like, this is the person that had all the babies killed. Okay. And when you try to think of like, what type of letter is a person like that going to write? And you think he might be able to, I don't know. Can you even think of something like that? You think a person like that wouldn't even be able to pick up a pen. He would just be so filled with insanity. But no, it's probably going to go something like this. Noble Romans, in the case whereof I am accused, these Jews are of all people the most superstitious, and no more to be trusted than the Hindus. By the way, Hindu is spelled with 2 O's. And I don't, whatever, okay. I have heard over and over about the superstitious Jews, and I've even heard it I feel like I've heard it in the Bible itself. And I have to say, his perspective made me go, oh, now I see why that's said so much by outside people. Like, he totally made it clear why they say that, and it is hilarious, little frightening, because you kind of see like, oh, is this the lifelong earth-long animosity that I'm seeing? Like, is that what this is about? So here we go. Jews are of all most superstitious, no more to be trusted than the Hindus. They have taught themselves, listen to the language. So this is a person who is not on the same page, does not believe any of this stuff, right? Perfect perspective. They have taught themselves to believe in but one God who dwells in another world. So they can neither see nor hear him, nor in any way approach him by their senses. When I saw that, I was like, is that weird? He said it like, let me just tell you. And I was like, okay. It was then that I realized that I am in a monotheistic religion. He was like, first of all, they can't see him or hear him because he dwells in another world. Like, I'm just like, what? They believe that he is unchangeable and unapproachable, that he can only manifest himself through some angel or spirit. He can only manifest himself through some angel or spirit or some light or the thunder or any strange and uncommon phenomenon. Hence, they are so superstitious that they can be made to believe anything. Now, I don't know where that comes in. Like, I'm still trying to put that together as I'm reading, like how that groundwork makes you able to believe anything. If you literally just believe in one thing that's invisible, which is narrowing it down to really just like that, I'm not sure how that translates to you can make these people believe anything. I guess because it's invisible. So it's like, oh, there's the proof there, and there's the proof there, and there's the proof there, and it's like all invisible stuff. Or using nature itself, because I guess if you believe in gods that, if you're constantly looking for a proof, like if you're using smoke and you're using drugs and you're using things to like actually sort of use that's your spiritual proof and not just like creation, then you're like, well, creation is a separate thing. This stuff is the God stuff. It's the rituals and the blood and the sacrifice and all that stuff. That stuff is tangible and material. I guess that's what he's using. So just get ready for more of that. I'm just trying to get you to understand where I'm eventually going to go here with this. Okay. Hence, okay, in order that you may know what kind of people I have to deal with. And even when he said that, I was like, okay, so we're dealing with somebody, because the letter is about him murdering babies. So when I read, in order that you may know what kind of people I have to deal with, I was like, okay, this is going to be full of excuses. Like, I mean, listen to this, right? I hope I don't need to go through the whole is this real thing with you with every single freaking thing. Like, we're on thing number 5 and we're just rolling with it. We're just rolling with it. Okay. In order that you may know what kind of people I have to deal with, I will give you some of their maxims. When the sun shines, they say their God smiles. When it is cloudy, they say he frowns. When it thunders, they say he is angry. And they hide themselves. When it rains, they say he weeps, and many other similar sayings. Now, my lords, you can see at once how far this people might be led if they could be made to believe this strange God was at their head and took up their cause. Okay, so like as I'm reading it the second time, I'm starting to see what he's saying. So, and by the way, Christians have the same problem. Not surprising because we serve the same God. So we're having the same problems here. So the Jews are going around, and how a lot of this is like normal for us now. The idea of it thundering being God's this or that, God's bowling, whatever. He was like, okay, like that has nothing to do with anything for them. And I would imagine that's because none of the gods that are worshipped care about, they're not in charge of the whole thing. Like if you believe in one God, you believe that God is in charge of everything. And to believe that one God is in charge of everything, why is he concerned with y'all? Just y'all, nobody else. He doesn't talk to anybody else. Like, so the sun shining and the thunder and the this, like everybody else is just going about their life. Literally everybody else in the entire world. But let you tell it, that's your God, like talking to you personally. Like he's just like, so he's like, yeah, if those people believe that, then they're clearly they're going to believe anything. When it's really the opposite. It actually takes a lot of evidence and a lot of assurance to keep moving in this direction over thousands of years. You can't just, if they could believe anything, if these are people that could and would believe anything, they would have been hopped all around the board of beliefs if that was the root cause of it. Like I just really want you to see and understand like what that would mean. Really sit with that. If we're dealing with superstitious people who can and would believe literally anything, if the sun is shining and they're going, oh, God's happy, blah, 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 how is it this same narrow group of beliefs carried through generations with very little variation? The only thing that has really changed is, or not changed, but the only sort of up and down you get is the quality of the type of the Jew that you get, the quality of the devotion. Is it hypocritical or not? But the beliefs have stayed consistent. Even if you want to say from this letter to now, let's just do the last 2,000 years, but we know it's been longer. He's telling us that the beliefs are still the same. Like, they're not changing over time. And if you're that superstitious, if it's, oh, superstition, let's just dismiss it. Like, I just want you to see, like, the proofs and how they're not all, like, in your face. Like, this is how God has chosen to work. Or let's just, for the sake of argument, say God has chosen to work in a underground, sometimes using like bombastic means, if it's just to like understand who you're dealing with, get you, it's like pillar by fire. He did things certain periods of time, and then it was like, tell your ancestors about, or tell your children about this, and tell your children's children about this day. And that held them for a while. And then a couple generations down the road, he did something else, and he sort of propelled this thing forward using bombastic means every once in a while. But for the most part, it was through this discipline, this adhere to these laws, and like, don't change anything. Do not add or change anything. Okay? Now, as a foundation for all this foolishness, they have a book and a set of men called priests who read and expound this book to them, and they will believe anything these priests tell them. Does that sound like a familiar indictment? To show how far they may be led, these priests tell them that some thousands of years ago, one Moses died. The solidarity that I feel right now with all the Jewish people, because it's like, oh my gosh, it's not about, it's the same God, because the children are getting the same flack. I just love, it's like, so you believe that some thousands of years ago, bro, one Moses died and went to where this strange God dwelt. He was gone 40 days. Okay, now he's saying that the Jews at this time were saying that Moses actually died. Or that's interesting. He was gone 40 days, and when he came back, he brought this book, which was written by this God for their government. Now, to prove the whole thing is a forgery, the book is wholly for the benefit of the priest. You guys, my mind is blown by this perspective. I really hope this video doesn't cut off, because I did not erase anything, so I hope I got enough room. So in Herod's mind, he's like, doesn't this set up this sets up a perfect thing for the priests? But, and while I agree with him that this seems like, this all seems very suspiciously in favor of the priests, right? And he's going to go into it. Maybe I should just read the rest. The poor have to work and toil continually and pay half what they make, and sometimes almost starve to support the lazy priests and furnish them and their women with plenty of fine garments and wine and the best of food. The priests tell these poor Jews that this God requires them to bring the best calf, the best lamb, and the best flour and oil to the temple to offer in sacrifice, and the priests in their party get all this for themselves. Let me just finish. Okay. I often tell them when they object to the Roman taxation that they could keep up 1,000 Caesars for much less than it costs to keep up their God and his priests. You guys, first of all, I love it. I love it because I can't even convey to you how much I love it, because you might think that I'm crazy for loving this. I don't even know how to begin. Lord, help me say what's in my brain. Like, yes, that does sound like this was just set up by your priests. But someone would have to start setting this up. Like, what priests started setting this up and agreed for people to do this in the first place? And how would they have gotten all the people to agree to do this? And yeah, that is what it sounds like. What are they getting out of it? Just live like the rest of the world. And like, why are you doing this weird thing that doesn't make any sense and doesn't seem to benefit you? Like, what are we doing? Now, in my human mind, or not my human mind, but like my Christian mind, looking at the history of the Jews and seeing, that's obviously an external view, looking on the outside in and going, why don't you just do this? Very similar to what people do when they're looking at Christianity. And the first thing that you want to say is like, yeah, no, it's going to look like that. Like, I can't do anything to make it not look like that to you. That looks like complete and total, like, this is a clown show. God's basically telling them, like, and you're thinking that can't possibly be purposeful. Like, why would God have it look like this? Why would it look like this? But it really does. It really is in line with his way of doing things, which is the way he is sticking out. He's sticking out in the earth, not in a God-like way. He's not using angels and royal robes and fancy shiny things to get anyone's attention. He's doing burning bush stuff. And also, since this is ultimately about Jesus coming to earth and like this whole plan that God has and this whole purpose that God has, it doesn't have anything to do with God like coming alongside us and making our lives more livable. Like, that's sort of secondary. The main thing is he's got a thing that he is doing that's going to redeem all of mankind. Like, he's big picture. There's a small picture, and he's got them doing what looks to be small picture things for them to focus on today. Look, do this for today. Gather my this. Here's the laws. Here's your functioning. Here's your stuff. That's not the whole of it, though. But when you're a human and you're only on the earth for 80 years and you're going, okay, what is the point of having all the poor people work and then having a single, the Levites just kind of sit up and do whatever, and you bring them, like, what are we doing? Like, this is going to your God? Like, how does that make sense? But that is also how God works. God can tell you, like, take all your belongings and put them in this hole and bury it. And do that every week. And the fact that you still exist when kingdoms and empires have risen and fallen, that is the proof of him in the earth. Because aside from it being noticeably, like, how is that even possible? Like, I've seen a lot of impossible things, but I know that this is impossible. You got that going for you, but then you also got this other thing that's like, he's constantly calling you to humility. So he's using humble things here because because of our state, which I could go even deeper than that about it, but because of our fallen state, if it ever becomes outwardly known while we're in our fallen state that God is the guy and you're the one that follows him, you're just going to get lifted in pride. You're going to be disgusting. He has to have you live the life until it's done. And you can only do that when you're keeping your head down, you're living for God, you're serving others, you're serving your family, serving your community, and living a peaceful, quiet life. Like that is what the word tells you to do. And everybody else doing YOLO and just trying to get all that they can get while they're alive and they can sleep when they're dead, those people are going to miss it. I mean, and this is consistent with everything that's ever being taught to you. So it's not even like I'm reading a lot into it and trying to make up an excuse. There's literally, I could find you a scripture to support everything that I'm saying, right? All right, let's keep going. The leaders are always quarreling and fighting among themselves and dividing off in different sects. Miracles are as common as poor physicians, which is also very interesting. That's him saying miracles are cheap. There's always some miracle happening, which means there's always some miracle happening. He's writing that off because he already thinks it's ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. So all he can see is like, okay, like the miracles mean nothing if you're living in this way that doesn't make any sense to anyone. Miracles are as common as poor physicians. The Essenes are noted for both. They prophesy, work miracles, see visions, and have dreams, and stand in reputation as quack doctors. They pretend to know all about angels, ghosts, and spirits. They profess the art of managing ethereal citizens of trans-atmospheric regions. They live together in colonies. Some of them are cenobitic and some are celibate communities. They maintain that all of them are priests and high priests, therefore their daily baptisms as the priests on duty. They wear the Levitical garments. Their tables are their altars, and their meals their only sacrifices. With this sanctimonious misanthropy, which is their highest virtue, they use the allegorical method of expounding the scripture. While we think and reason and reflect and use our faculties to obtain our ideas of duty, they shut their eyes and fold their hands, waiting to be endued with power from their God. And when they get it, it proves to be all to their own advantage and interest, to the ruin of their fellow citizens. Now, all of that is an incredibly, incredibly interesting indictment. Hold on, because I think my food's here. Okay. So, all of that is a very thorough, interesting indictment about them. Now, what he said could be a similar thing going on with Christianity where there is there's a smattering, there's some people in there that are legit, and then there's just a lot of other people just doing other stuff about the whole, they pretend to know all about angels, ghosts, and spirits. And that's not necessarily part of the religion. That could be part of how people are. There's a lot of Christians going around feeling pressure to be experts in things that they're not experts in. But you get to a certain point where you realize you don't know everything, but you can at least know where to refer people to. And then there's just certain things that like you're not even supposed to know because God is not really trying to tell you. So that could be, I will concede that point to him. That's fine. Really interesting to see an outside person's view, especially when he said all this, he said, when they get it, it proves to be all to their own advantage and interest, which I never even really thought about, like what that might look like to people on the outside. But I mean, if you're worshiping God. I mean, that's the point. It's like you can't criticize it on both points. Either you're living this sort of ascetic life and you're removing yourself from other parts of society, and in turn you're relying on God for all of your emotional, material, whatever needs, and He's providing that, and you're being happy about it. Like, all that goes together. You're not using your own resources to get the things in life that you want. You're not following the normal way. And through doing that, you're relying on God, and He's coming through. And every time that He does come through, because again, it shouldn't be possible to get anything if you're refusing to participate the way that people think you should. So every time that God comes through for you, because you're obeying Him, because He's telling you, don't participate in the ways of the world, and you're still able to get things in life and live a fulfilled life, that's going to solidify your faith. He's going, well, they're so dumb, they're so silly, and this is the average person view. They're so silly. They're putting all their resources together and giving it to the priest. Like, that should crumble a society. Like, that's ridiculous, right? So nothing good should come to you ever. Or, it should, like, you might get a broken clock moment, but it shouldn't be a consistent thing that can keep you living, right? So now he's mad now he's got beef with the fact that it seems to benefit them and to the ruin of their fellow citizens. Now, I don't know about the ruin of the fellow citizens thing. That seems like a bit of an exaggeration. Maybe, like, if we're the fellow citizens trying to scheme and plot and scheme and do something to the Jewish people, and then God had to protect them, because that could be the ruin that you're talking about. And we see that people aren't above trying to scheme and plot and plan, and then when that doesn't work, then they get now they're victimized. I mean, that does happen. That's serious precedent for that. So that kind of explains that whole thing. Now, the fact that God isn't including everybody in this system is specifically, we know that's a plan of God. It wasn't supposed to be forever. In fact, He was nominated to be the guy to help introduce it to the entire world. And he ended up fulfilling a prophecy, a bad one. And also, what does this all have to do with you killing babies? Like, what are we talking about? Okay, the Sadducees are another party equally absurd. They get their doctrine from Antigonus Sacius, who was president of the Sanhedrin. Very interesting information. I'm not sure that I ever knew that. They reject all the traditions of the scribes and Pharisees. Then we find the Sofer or scribe. They are maybe Sefer? I don't know. They are the writers and expounders of the law. The Pharisees derive from Pharash, to separate from all men on account of their sanctity. Separate from all men on account of their sanctity. But it is useless to name all these sects with their peculiar views, each differing from the other. They are all strict monotheists. That's Herod saying it. Yet they differ from each other more than the polytheists do. Fair assessment. I have given this detailed description of the people and their various sects that the Senate may have an idea of the situation I am in. Backpedal, backpedal, backpedal. But if you could be here and see and associate with them as I do, to see them with all their sanctity of life, and then behold their treachery to each other, see how they lie and steal the one from the other, and then see how low and base are their priests, you would be much better qualified to judge of my actions. Again, not really adding up to the genocide, though. As to this great excitement at Bethlehem, 3 strange, fantastic looking men called on my guards at the gate and asked them where was the babe born that was to be king of the Jews. My guards told me of it, and I ordered the men to be brought into the court. I asked them who they were. One of them said he was from Egypt. I mean, look at this information that we're getting. That's like no more speculation, right? I asked what was their business. He said they were in search of the babe that was born to rule the Jews. I told them that I ruled the Jews against under Augustus Caesar. He said this babe would rule when I was gone. I told him not unless he was born under the purple. I asked him how he knew of this babe. He said they had all had a dream the same night about it. Interesting. I told them that the devil played with our brains when we were asleep. Well, there you go. Case closed. He drew a parchment roll from his bosom and read in the Hebrew language, Thou Bethlehem, least among the kingdoms of the world, out of thee should come a man that should rule all people. I asked him who wrote that. He said, the God of heaven. I asked him where he got that parchment. He said it was the law of the covenant of the Jews. He also said a star had traveled before them all the way to Jerusalem. I told him his God was mistaken, that Bethlehem was not a kingdom, nor was it the least in the kingdom of Judea. See, the scholar is telling you, oh, yeah, no, Bethlehem, there was no Messiah because Bethlehem is not even a kingdom, and it's not even the least in Judea, which is the kingdom. So it couldn't have been that. That is what your scholars are doing. They're doing what Herod is doing. Like, so you can't listen to scholars because they don't know what they're talking about. Like, it's not that their brains, it's not like their brains aren't working. He just doesn't have a scope of the information. So he's giving them factual information. It's factual, it's logical, it's on the books. Very clear. Bethlehem's not a kingdom, so none of this could be right. If you do that, it's just stupid. Anybody who knows the story knows that that's dumb, and that no. Okay. I told them that they were superstitious fanatics and ordered them out of my presence. But the excitement grew until it became intense. I found nothing could control it. I called the Hillel court, which was the most learned body of talent in Jerusalem. I might have to read the Hillel. There's a Hillel writing or something in this book. This is the first time reading about these people. And I've seen it, and it's been in literally every single letter. They read out of their laws that Jesus was to be born of a virgin in Bethlehem, that he was to rule all nations and all the kingdoms of the world were to be subject to him, and that his kingdom should never end, but his appointees should continue this rule forever. I found this court just as sanguine as those strangers, and in fact, it was in everybody's mouth. I thought I could discover already a sort of deriding and mocking spirit among the lower class in regard to the Roman authority. So now we see that, sanguine means, excited, gregarious energy, right? So what he's saying basically is that this event got people excited. Now, I don't know why that would cause people to already, he could be making that up where he's like, everybody's kind of already losing respect for the Roman authority. I don't know why they figured that, to get excited. It's like the baby was just born. He's got to grow up, y'all. Unless they thought a whole baby was going to rule everybody. But he could just be making that up, just to be saying so. Now, it is my opinion that the scene that occurred at Bethlehem was nothing more than a meteor traveling through the air. Gotta love it. Or the rising vapor from the foot of the mountains out of the low, marshy ground, as is often the case. It's a very common phenomenon. This isn't, some miraculous thing. And as to the noise heard by Melcher, who was the previous priest of the letter that we last heard about, or last read, As to the noise heard by Milker and those shepherd boys, it was only the echo of the shepherds on the other side of the mountain calling the night watch or scaring away the wolves from their flocks. Completely and totally natural, explainable phenomenon, obviously. They heard heavenly music, but you know what? Dismiss, dismiss, dismiss. But although this was nothing but a phenomenon of nature and the whole thing a delusion, it did not better the condition I was in. A man will contend for a false faith stronger than he will for a true one, from the fact that the truth defends itself, but a falsehood must be defended by its adherents, first to prove it to themselves, and secondly that they may appear right in the estimation of their friends. Now, this is always he's absolutely right, and unfortunately, there's really nothing to do to get rid of this phenomenon. This is, I believe, the intention of God. Like, either we could all be silly, or scientists and people of their ilk could all be silly. Maybe there's a third group, fourth group, whatever. Uh, the nature of the truth defends itself, and he knows that. And yet somehow he's also making wrong conclusions, in my estimation. How is it possible? I feel like I'm trying to do a good job of showing where he's missing things, but someone can easily come along and do the same thing with me. It's not that like we're both having these we're both mirroring each other perfectly, exactly. I think there's things that are being purposely missed and overlooked. But yeah, he thinks he's on the right side of history, like most people do, and that's part of the test. That's part of the test. Um, but the fact is, and also he killed like thousands of babies. So like, what are we talking about? But the fact is, I'm just going to keep bringing that up. But the fact is, this case is about as follows: the Roman taxation was cutting off the support of the priest, and they were smarting under it. Again, the double taxing, that is, the tax to the priests and the tax to the Romans, was bearing heavily on the common people, so that they could not stand it. And the priests saw that one of them would have to go unpaid. And as they saw the Romans were the stronger, they wrote these things in the Tosefta and read it daily in all their synagogues and temples, that the Jewish mind might be prepared for the event, knowing that they would magnify a mote into a mountain when it came to anything outside of the common laws of nature, and knowing that if they could get the common people to believe in the things, there would be no end to their fighting. Okay, so the way that Herod is explaining the because eventually when he's building a case to the rising tensions in the region. Of course, it has nothing to do with the fact that he killed the infants. No, it's because they already are under this thing with their priests where they're giving the priests all this money or all of their stuff. And then now they got to worry about this other Roman tax, and they're cooking up a thing for the people. They're cooking up a superstition for the people to believe in that I guess is going to eventually lead to an insurrection. So, they cooked up this baby story. They saw a light in the heavens. Oh, it's there. Oh, the superstitious people. It's a baby. The baby's coming. The coming king. But we already established that all of the dismissive things he was saying about the Jews wasn't entirely correct. It can't just be. You can't just explain thousands of years of devotion to a religion to superstition. But he's still building. If you believe that, then you're going to believe the next block that he's building, which is like something happened. They use their superstition to make it into a thing, to make it about, he's basing it in just regular secular things that happened. Okay. it's giving me a little bit of sympathy for non-religious people. It's like, y'all poor things. Y'all just think we like the weirdos who just believe in anything are just wrapping themselves. We're like a hive, a beehive that you stirred up or whatever. It's just so sad. Okay. Um. All right. So they could get the common people to believe in the things, there would be no end to their fighting, and from all appearances, the excitement was fast driving the people that way. It had already become a byword with the children of Bethlehem and Jerusalem that the Jews had a new king, that neither Caesar nor Herod would reign any more, and that they would have to pay no more taxes to keep up the Roman government. So it doesn't help that the people themselves also misunderstood what was about to happen. So the people who, while they are believing God, and this again, we're getting to a whole life lesson situation here, the people that follow God and believe God are also couching the terms and the things, the signs that God is giving them in human current terms. So they think, rightfully so, they have a whole history, a whole precedent set, like that this king is coming just in time for them to have a new king and not have to worry about Caesar and them anymore. And that's what they're telling Herod, who already is out of the loop and doesn't understand what's going on either. So just see how these things can get even more misunderstood because the people themselves that follow God are also misunderstanding what God is doing. But that doesn't mean the whole thing is not real. It means that God is a real person who can be misunderstood, who can have his own mind and his own reasoning for doing things. And even in your communication with him, you can misunderstand what he's saying. And then you have to go back and go, oh, I get it all now. I get it. But yeah, you got to always keep the channel open, which a lot of people, I mean, this is a common thing that people have to do through their lives. I mean, you got people who came and went, who fall away from the faith and all of these different things. People who put in decades of ministry and service and not be Christians anymore. And you think, well, what causes that? And most people on the outside go, well, it's a cult. And some people, and there's tons of people who, stay, and then there's only a few people that get the courage to leave. Yeah, that's, it's not a bad explanation, but also, God is already gave you a book that has tons of evidence that he does one thing and man doesn't perceive what he's doing. And that happens over and over and over. And instead of thinking like, hey, maybe now is one of those other times, or the many times he's done that, where he's really just kind of blown people's minds and made them think something was happening, or they misinterpreted something and didn't realize this was going to be for the big picture thing. Like, no, this is it. I'm out. Like, and a lot of people basically, they lay their crown down and say, I quit. And I mean, unfortunately, they can come back and get it. And some people do. I mean, but you got to have the time to do that. And you don't want to find out too late that, whatever. Or you don't want to be like Caiaphas on the other side going, okay, I don't know. I like, being the one to do the one thing that you absolutely should not have done. Okay, so Roman government. Such talks and sayings were common among the poorest classes of society. So I saw an insurrection brewing fast, and nothing but a most bloody war as the consequence. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you were just being an insightful visionary. Now, under these circumstances, what was I to do? In my honest judgment, it was best to pluck the undeveloped flower in its bud, lest it should grow and strengthen and finally burst and shed its deadly poison over both nations and impoverish and ruin them forever. My enemies can see I could have no malice toward the infants of Bethlehem. So he's saying even people who were my enemies would tell you like it wasn't a personal thing. Like no shade to the infants of Bethlehem. I took no delight in listening to the cries of innocent mothers. May all the gods forbid. No, I saw nothing but an insurrection and a bloody war were our doom, and in this the overthrow and downfall to some extent of our nation. These are the grounds of my action in this matter. I am satisfied I did the best that could be done under the circumstances, as my motive was purely to do the best I could for my whole country. I hope you will so consider it, and I submit this statement for your consideration, promising faithfulness and submission to your judgment. Herod Antipater. Now, this theme of killing a couple of people, couple of babies in this case, to save the whole of whateverism, uh, is now striking me as an exclusively anti-Christ idea. I really don't see the only instance of sacrificing one life or a few lives or whatever for the sake of many is Jesus. Jesus died so that, but he literally, like, he died and literally saved potentially every single person. And then he didn't actually die, though. He is alive. So he actually lost nothing. I think that by and large, this idea of, sacrificing a few to save the many is an antichrist demonic idea. This, let's test this thing. Let's do trials on this few people and to see if this drug works, and then we can save thousands of lives or thousands, millions of lives. Is just, I just don't see that in anything God does. So I don't think it's of God. And, Caiaphas, we see Caiaphas do the same thing. At best, it's like maybe man reasoning. At worst, it's just demonic influence. So, yeah, we hear that from these genocidal people who are doing atrocities. Like, this is for the greater good. And I think for God, there's just the good. It's not like, and of course that makes sense because God doesn't have to choose between this one and that one. It's just like, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to do the perfect thing. And that's the only choice. And so sometimes, just like the greater good and the greatest good is sometimes that one gets to be a hot mess as much as it wants to be. It's like, oh, well, look at all the lives we saved. We had to freaking give people Ebola in this country, but look what we did. But, don't let God, make your life go this direction instead of that one. He's just a complete and total dictator. You know what I'm saying? It's like he's doing something that's going to be perfect, and you're going to sit and marvel at it for eternity after it's done. Like that's what he's promising. These people are like, well, it's going to save some lives. Okay, lives that are going to be dead. Like, do you hear what God said though? Like he's saying, listen, just let your life go. Your life's just going to go, but then you're going to like remain with me forever and ever. Like let go of this life. Don't even worry about it. You're like, oh my God, that's going to cause people to jump off of bridges and do all kinds of stuff and get taken advantage of. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, where is this fantastic, better choice that you have? So anyway, that's Herod's letter. I did not think it was going to take that long, but I had to do a lot of like groundwork for that one. So yeah. So the other one might even be shorter than that one. And this is apparently his son, Herod Antipas. So this is about John the Baptist. It's going to be super funny to hear the son talk exactly like the dad. Herod Antipas' defense before the Roman Senate in regard to the execution of John the Baptist. We found on the records of the Roman Senate Herod Antipas' defense respecting the various accusations preferred against him by different persons. In his defense, there are some very important items regarding the Christian church. The reader will notice that these events were recorded with no intention of establishing other facts. The history of John the Baptist, the history of Jesus Christ, the killing of the children by his father at Bethlehem. So so he said the same thing that I would say reading this. Like he's not even meaning to establish these other things, but he does, right? To Tiberius Caesar and the Senate of Rome. My noble lords, greeting. It is true, as my opponent asserts, that I was defeated in battle with Aretas, king of Arabia, but I was forced to fight when unprepared for the conflict. I either had to fight or have the country overrun by this wicked people. It is true I was defeated, but I was owing to the want of time and better preparation. Aretas came upon me without warning. Notwithstanding, I was defeated. His army was so crippled that he had to withdraw his forces from the field and has not been able to rally them since. So our country was saved from the devastation of a foreign foe. I understand that the superstitious Jews say my defeat was for my wickedness in beheading John the Baptist. My understanding of the God of the Jews is that he does not chastise the innocent for the crimes of the guilty. These people, boy. What did my actions have to do with the poor, suffering soldier? He's talking about John. But if he had to punish all in order to reach me, he, meaning God, because he's got uppercase H, but if he had to punish all in order to reach me, then where is his almighty power they boast so much of? I do not know whether their God was angry at me or not. I mean, this is a lot of defense for you cutting off a man's head. Like, did you cut the man's head off or not, bro? There is one thing I know. The act was done with the holy intention of bringing the greatest amount of good to the greatest number of people. And if this is so, no court can gainsay it or condemn it. Humans come through every single time with this mess, justifying themselves. The facts in this case are about as follows. John the Baptist had set up a new mode of religion altogether different from the Jewish religion, teaching baptism instead of circumcision. We got a second witness about what baptism is. It's in place of circumcision, which had been the belief and custom of the Jews in all ages past. According to their theory, God appeared to Abraham hundreds of years before and told him with his own lips how and what to do to be saved. And the Jews had lived according to this until it had become their nature. And all their forefathers had lived in this way. David, Solomon, Isaac, Jacob, and all the holy prophets had gone to heaven in this way of God's own appointment. Okay, so I don't know if we can go so far as to say that Herod is co-signing David and Solomon and Isaac and Jacob as having existed, or if he's just paraphrasing the religion, the history of the religion. Now, the question came to them as they suggested it to me. How has God found that he was wrong? This is all God, he meaning God, uppercase H. Has God found that he was wrong? Has his wisdom failed him? Or has the unchangeable changed? And is he wavering in his purpose? I don't know. Maybe I just don't understand what I'm talking about. Such would be the natural conclusions of a sensible man under the circumstances. True, but you'd be wrong. Not wrong, but like God, I think we expect, it's like, so did God just one day decide to wake up? And it's just like, yeah. Sometimes the answer is yeah, because where does it say that he's not allowed to do that? You're allowed to do that, but he can't do that. Like, If he wants to up and change it, and that's when you go, oh, okay, so you've been relying on God's continuity this entire time. So what? So God just suddenly made it summertime in the middle of, is that wrong? Should he not be allowed to do that? Seemed like God could do anything. You're welcome, by the way. You're welcome, but that every day is the same and you can anticipate that, and that the seasons never change, and that he vowed to never destroy the earth again, which I just looked up the other day, yesterday, and I was like, whoa, because it said that he sent the rainbow as a covenant to the earth. And I was like, bro, he promised the earth that he wouldn't destroy it. He didn't promise, oh, the earth needs a population. No, because it was just Noah and them. It was just 8 people. So he promised the earth. He was like, Earth, I'm not going to do that to you again, bro. That was really deep. I was like, so that wasn't, we understand he's not going to break the promise, but it wasn't to us. It was to the earth. So that's really deep. Anyways, such would be the natural conclusions, blah, blah, blah. Now John the Baptist had no authority from God for what he was doing. This is amazing that everybody knows this. Had no authority from God for what he was doing, as Abraham had. All he could say was, he that sent me to baptize is true. Bro, and he could not tell who he was. That's so interesting. I cannot. Then his going into the wilderness. God had ordered Solomon to build the finest temple that was ever built in the world, and made promises that whosoever came to that house with his offerings, his prayers should be heard and answered. This temple had been the place of their meeting for hundreds of years, for the Jews think this temple the next place to heaven. First of all, these letters are also like really making me understand the importance of the temple. Like this was like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some movie where they had some, I don't know. There's always some place that's like the main place. It's like, I don't know why the Matrix is coming to my head right now, but like whatever it was, it Zion, they called it Zion. It's like, but that doesn't really count. It's like the place where Oz or something. It's like the place where you go and like that's where you need to go if you want to get your question answered. It's like this high place of high holiness. And it makes sense that people may have come from anywhere to speak to God. Like that is really going to change how I read the word and understand the temple. Like, ooh, wee, that's such a good piece, little tidbit. Um, Okay, so now see the difference. First, John had no authority. Second, he changes God's place of worship. Third, he changes the doctrines. Fourth, he changes the mode of application. Now, the idea of Gamaliel, shout out Gamaliel, was that John wanted to be some great man, hence he took this mode of eccentric life to establish it. And there is nothing better qualified than the course he took to make an impression upon the ignorant and unlearned. To go away out into the wilderness by himself, get a few friends from Jerusalem to go out and hear him, and come back and tell all the great wonders which they had seen in the wilderness. What great wonders is he talking about, by the way? I didn't know about the great wonders. Also, what's this got to do with you beheading folks? And this is just dismiss, and come up with see how you could just easily manipulate people? Now, if I went and I got myself a group of people, blah, 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 it's like, bro, why did you behead him? Then John's appearance, his long uncombed hair and beard, his fantastic clothing, and his food, nothing but bugs and beans. I love this. I can't wait to see the footage of this, man. Such a course and such a character are well qualified to lead the illiterate astray. I gotta say, I really like the idea that even 2,000 years ago, this was a known thing that, I mean, who knows how many people had tried to do this similar thing already. So, today it's the televangelist or whatever people say is the whatever. So back then it was the prophet. It was the, that's so funny. These troubles on the Jewish mind were very heavy and gave such men as Hildarium, Shammai, Hillel, and others great concern. Okay, I didn't know that Hillel was still alive. Like, they made it seem like they had been following that teaching for like a really long time or something. And no wonder, for in their judgment it was vacating the temple of religious worship. It was blocking the road to heaven and driving the poor and unsuspecting to ruin, as well as destroying the whole nation. So it was by their request, as so ordered, that it was better to execute one to save the many from a worse fate. 2 times in the same letter. Like, so you're the savior. So when you look at it, I'm really like the best person to do, like, whatever. And this is the true reason for the deed, and not to please the whim of a dancing girl, as you have heard. That's great. I'm gonna go with the Bible on that one. Like, you didn't have, nobody was bringing her up. Why did you bring her up? Like, you probably did it for that anyway, because you say you promised her anything, and when she asked what, because the Bible doesn't completely make him a villain in my mind. Like, I never thought like, ooh, that you will hear it. It's just like, he didn't want to do it. He didn't know she was going to ask for that. And the only reason why she asked for that is because she went to her mom, and that's what her mom said to do. So that still sounds completely accurate. Now, my lords, if this is not satisfactory, I would ask my accuser, Caius, to write to any of the learned Jews and learn if my statement is not correct. Yeah, I'm sure the learned Jews would have your back, bro. As to Agrippa's accusing me of having arms for 70,000 soldiers, it is correct, but they were left me by my father, Herod the Great. And as they were needed to defend the province, and I did not know it was necessary to report them, I never thought of keeping them secret. This is fascinating. Like, what is he talking about? I don't care. Like, this is great. But as to my being in league with Sejoneus, I appeal to the virtue of my conduct and demand investigation. As to what Pontius Pilate says in regard to my cowardice and disobedience in the case of Jesus of Nazareth, I will say in my own defense, I was informed by all the Jews that this was the same Jesus that my father aimed to destroy in his infancy. For I have it in my father's private writings and accounts of his life, showing that when the report was circulated of 3 men inquiring where was he that was born King of the Jews, he called together the Hillel and Shammai schools. This is what I'm saying. Either Hillel's like 100 years old, or like, what are we doing? Maybe like, because the sentence that I was talking about, he says, these troubles on the Jewish mind were very heavy and gave such men as Hildarium, Shammai, Hillel, and others great concern. He might be talking about some overarching thing, and they are dead and gone, and like, this is just, he's just talking about the tradition of Jewish scholarship or whatever. That it was decided that he was to be born in Bethlehem in Judea, as read and interpreted that night by Hillel. Okay, so maybe Hillel is alive. Whatever. So when my father learned that there was a birth of a male child in Bethlehem under very strange circumstances, and he could not learn who nor where the child was, he sent and had the male children slain that were near his age. Now, I don't think I mentioned, but I was going to say, like, that doesn't necessarily mean, because I would read that and I'd be like, does that mean that he, like, why would he believe that? Like, why would he believe that enough to act on it and do that? But then I was like, oh no, especially reading this letter, it's like, okay, so even if he did, whether he did or didn't believe it, but even if he didn't believe it, knowing that the Jews believed it, he did that so that would decrease their belief. So that would, because the whole idea was like, there was this groundswell of like, oh, the king is born and blah, 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 blah. So now he's like, okay, now there's no king. They're all dead. So enough of that. King's dead. Like, your king is dead. So go on about your business and keep them taxes coming, right? Okay. And he could not learn where the child was, where he sent and had the male children slain. Afterward, he learned that his mother had taken him and fled into the wilderness. For this attempt to uphold the Roman authority, Yeah. For this attempt to uphold the Roman authority in the land of Judea, the world has not ceased to curse him to this day. And yet the Caesars have done 1,000 worse things and done them 1,000 times, and it was all well. Bro, these people are trash, dude. Just think how many lives have been lost to save the Roman Empire, while those infants were only removed in their innocence from the evil to come. Like, you don't want to bring any children into this world, right? The proper way to judge of action is to let the actor judge, or the one with whom the action terminates. If this should be done, and there is a life of happiness beyond this for innocents to dwell in, those innocents or those infants, as well as the wait, yeah, those infants as well as the Rachels. Oh, he's talking about the moms. That's really deep. Listen, because there's this whole thing about like that fulfilling prophecy when he did the genocide, and it was like, I forget where it is, but it says like Rachel is wailing and weeping and wailing and refuses to be comforted, right? So that fulfilled a prophecy, which I don't know, all of that bloviating about superstition, and they're just fulfilling prophecy, like they just dismissing that. Um, and those infants, as well as the Rachels, should be thankful to my father for the change. Bruh. Again, my lords, Pilate is a higher officer than I, and you know in our law, the lower court always has the right to appeal to the higher. I think there he's saying, oh no, he's defending his right to turn it to Pilate, because there's a you know legendary back and forth between him and Pilate as to where Jesus should be tried. As to Pilate saying that Jesus was Galilean, he is mistaken. Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, as the records show. And as to his citizenship, he had none. He wandered about from place to place, having no home, making his abode principally with the poor. He was a wild fanatic who had taken up the doctrines of John, but not his baptism, and was quite an enthusiast. He had learned soothsaying while in Egypt to perfection. I have no idea what this. Caiaphas said it. I don't know why they're trying to pin that on him. I tried to get him to perform some miracle while in my court, but he was too sharp to be caught in a trap. Like all necromancers, he was afraid to show off before the intelligent. Bruh. From what I could learn, he had reprimanded some of the rich Jews for their meanness, and his reproaches were not out of the way. From what I heard, they would have been much better men if they had practiced what he preached. So this is my defense. I submit it for your consideration, praying for clemency, Herod Antipas. So those are those two letters, right? Now, this is the last thing that I came across before I started this video, and I was shooketh because as I was reading this, I was still ruminating about all the things that Herod had said about the Jews, and how the secular view and the misunderstanding and not understanding, like, why are you you're serving the priest, and you're giving all the poor people are serving the priest and giving them stuff to their God, and they could be, if they did that, for Rome, they could, like, we're not even asking as much as they're asking for, like, blah blah blah, and all of these sort of appeals to what would be reasonable and rational. And I'm just sitting there going, like, they don't understand. They don't understand. They didn't understand then. Even with 2,000 years, 2,000 years gives you a lot more insight as to what's going on. But as a Christian, but if you're not on this page, that you're still looking at everything the same way as these people are looking at it. And I just thought, I was like, because I know that he only did that with the Jews, because the whole thing of doing that with the Jews was not because it's not silly. That was a covenant to Abraham. So he's working through the line of Abraham, and he's using Abraham's faith. Like, I understand, having studied it, knowing like what he's doing. He's working. And the whole point is like, the other thing is like, this is about his plan. Like, he's allowing the people of God, he's allowing the Jews to work for him. But it's not the same. That's why it's not really a religion, because the religions are, what's my purpose, and how do I do this, and how do I get my energy to do whatever. And it's all about, and what's my purpose in the universe. It's all about the self and trying to get every individual person, like, that's the idea. If we all worship these gods, it's all about, like, it's literally just relegated to your life on the earth. And God is doing this thing ultimately for everybody, because that's what he cares about, is everybody. But he has a plan and a way of doing it. And so I was just sitting there, and I'm just like, dude, I know that if I go into the Bible right now, like, I couldn't think of a specific verse like that could really encompass like what I want to say, or what I know God would say about this. Like, what would God's rebuttal be to all of this in response to this type of complaint, I guess, or criticism. And I was like, I know if I could just put my purpose in the search bar, like, look for stuff in the Bible, and I can just put in my purpose, and I know that I'll get like the perfect verse that'll explain what I want to explain. And I just knew that just from knowing the Bible and reading it, and knowing that there's something like that in there. So just lesson number one, it's like, that's the advantage of reading the Bible and knowing it and knowing how to navigate it. It's like, I don't know the answer, but I kind of know where to find it. And I bet it has something to do with him saying my purpose. I know I could find some prophetic book where he's talking about that, right? So that's what I did. So I looked up my purpose, okay? And I thought I would find a lot more results right away. It was only like maybe a half dozen that included the words my purpose. There's a lot of just purpose, but my purpose only brought up a few things. And then of those few things, only two were in the context that I was looking for. This is what I found, okay? This is Isaiah 46, 10 to 11. Isaiah 46, 10 to 11. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. From the east I summon a bird of prey. From a far-off land, a man to fulfill my purpose. What I have said that I will bring about, what I have planned that I will do. That I will do. Let me read the next one before I say anything. Then I found Isaiah 55, 9 to 11. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. Now, part of me just wants to say, if you don't hear what I hear and you don't see what I see, just forget it. You're not going to be a Christian. You can leave now. We're done. Just forget it. It's all nonsense. You're right. Like, if you don't see what I just did, what just happened, then just go home. Go home. I just read you letters from two dudes from that time period that had absolutely terrible things to say about Jewish people and their superstitions. Them Jewish people and them superstitions got me in 2024 a book. A book. Okay? Just them doing that podunk thing that shouldn't have worked. Now I've got a whole heaping book of evidence of a God and his personality. 2,000 years strong. Longer than that, because they were at this before Jesus. So thousands of years strong, we got this thing. Now nobody is coming along to say that this book is new. Everybody knows this book is old, and who kept track of the book? It's the people of God, because they've been saying that they're people of God for thousands of years. No one could see the evidence. No one could relate. What did God say about it? What did God have to say about it? Listen, I do what I do, and that's just what it is. I'm going to accomplish my word. Like, did you hear what that thing said? Did you hear what I read? By the way, written by a guy 600 years from Herod, who's killing babies because he doesn't even know what's going on. Thousands of years removed from me. Also, died before he saw anything that has anything to do with any of this. Like, just died. Wrote this and died. A guy completely unrelated to what I'm talking about, to what this guy is talking about, just wrote this down and died. This is what he wrote down. He answered the question that I thought people would have today about this. The guy that wrote it down and died, this was the answer. Okay, let's read it again. 46:10. I make known the end from the beginning. This is supposedly God talking to him, right? Is that what we do? The quotes? God said, tell Christine to put in the video this right here. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. Don't worry about what we're doing out here in the wilderness. Don't worry about the priests and how and the system that. Don't worry about it. I'm doing something. I'm doing something. You'll see. You won't see because you'll be dead. But write it down so the people that need to see, they'll have it later. Go get the coin out of the fish's mouth. You're going to go fishing. There's going to be a coin in a fish's mouth. Use that, pay the taxes. This is not possible, you guys. It's not possible. 10,000 coincidences. It's either 10,000 coincidences, which you know from your living is not possible, or this is God. It's a little eccentric. It's a lot eccentric. That's what you need. That's what you need. To make all of this, you need a lot of just... Have you seen the most innovative person ever? Jesus was also walked around and was not concerned with his own actual physical state. Multiple people said that. It's giving Einstein, it's giving Picasso and Basquiat and all of these people that we revere and go, oh, trust the process. You guys, that's such an epic answer. I was just like, look, I was like, I know, like, I would find something to sum this all up. Not only did I, like, this is God, like, on his whatever. He's talking his stuff right here. He's like, I'll go get a bird of prey from the east. I'll go get some dude in a far off land and bring him here. Like, I know I got this whole thing planned out, and I might, like, now he's describing, you know how the rain and the snow comes down from heaven and it comes and it waters the earth and it makes food, it makes stuff for the farmer to sow and get money, and it makes food for the people to, like, that's what my word is doing. It's kind of like that. It's doing all of the things. Like, that's such an epic reply to the answer to this. Like, there should be no reply. There should be nothing. If God doesn't exist, if all of this is just pie in the sky, it should just be a blank wall. It should just be like, oh, just trust the process and don't open the present, because, just keep the present in your hand unwrapped and just know that it's from God and that it's beautiful, and just no, I'm going to have an old, centuries old thing that was written down by a guy who couldn't possibly know what he was writing down and what he was even talking about. I'm going to have him answer you in 2024. Like, whatever. I'm trying to get you to see, like, this is how God works. Like, it's just, if you don't see it, if you just think, oh, well, that can be explained away, that can be explained away, that can be explained away, and you just spend your life dismissing everything, like, don't be a Christian. You can't stomach it. Just don't do it. Like, this is God. Like, I was shook when I read that. Okay, this is the last thing I'm going to say. I had this thought about crowds. And how we all know and we all agree that crowds, a single person is smart. Crowds tend to get a little bit dumb. When you're in a crowd and somebody goes, oh my God, like, not even that. It's like you sense danger's on the way. If you sense danger is happening and you're in a crowd, like, you might look up into the sky, or you see off in the distance, like, hey, that wave looks like it's coming towards us and it's not calming down. But if you're in the crowd, if you're on the beach, everybody's on the beach, and you look to your neighbors and you see if anybody else is starting to move. No one's starting to move, so you don't move. That's the stupidity of the crowd. And that's what y'all are doing. Not y'all, but y'all. You're going, well, there's no evidence, and you're looking around to see if anybody else has any evidence. You're going, well, I don't know. If we could have heard about it by now, I would have got a tweet. I would have got a notification if Jesus was the guy. Like, people would be acting different. Okay. You're like, well, and then, when I see it, okay. When the tsunami wave, when you see the tsunami wave, it's too late. It's too late. This is in the natural. It's too late. When everybody starts to moving, it's too late. When one or two people start moving, there's still time. That's why they're moving. Because they're like, we got it. I don't know. This is looking, and everybody's going, ooh, you're freaking everybody out. You're freaking everybody out. Like, stop packing up really fast. You're killing the vibe. Okay, that's what y'all are doing right now. As soon as you realize, oh my Lord, there's really a tsunami. Oh my Lord, here comes Jesus. It's too late. Too late. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. That is what everyone is trying to tell you. Like, that's what it's going to be like. And for a lot of people, it's just going to be inevitable. It's just going to be inevitable. There's still some fail-safes after that, because he wants to get anybody who wants to come. But I'm telling you, like, it seems subtle, but when you really, really look at things, it's just like that guy who was a scientist, and he realized, like, all of the jewels that are in Revelation, talking about, like, all the 12 gates that are named after 12 tribes in heaven, and they all have jewels on them, and all of the jewels that are mentioned are all jewels that refract light, like, or it's like light can go through them and they can shine, like, and this is not something that scientifically could have been known. It leaves out things like diamonds and all these other jewels that he could have named. It only names things that absorb, refract light or whatever. And he was like, that's not a coincidence. He knows enough about science to know there's no way they could have known that. There's no, like, how could you have picked 12 of all of the different jewels and they all do that? So those people are going to make it because they understand what a burning bush looks like, what a sign looks like. You're looking for just some outward thing that's going to make you react and make a whole crowd react. It's too late. And that's why Jesus says the only sign for you is the sign of Jonah, because it's just that's the spectacular sign is going to be the thing. It's going to be too late, and it'll be a sign, all right. You're going to have a sign, and that's the one that you're going to get. All right. Well, I'm done preaching. I'm going to do another video, actually, I think, because I feel like it should only be like 8.5 minutes long, and I'm going to just bust it out. But anyway, I think we're done with the letters low key. I might try to, I don't know, I might do the commentary. The commentary is pretty interesting. I don't know. I love this letter. I just want to like go back through and pick the bones and re-eat and lick stuff off the spoon. I love it, but I think we're done. But I don't know. I might do some more research or something. I don't know. But because I love doing this. It's absolutely fascinating. I've learned more in the last couple of days than I have in years of Bible study and sermons. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I'm done. Y'all be blessed. Bye.